President Uhuru Kenyatta has officially opened the 9th edition of Africities Summit in the intermediary Kisumu city. The event, which is expected to be held from 17th to 21st of May 2022, has attracted more than 10,000 participants from all over the world. The theme of this year's summit is the role of intermediary cities of Africa in the implementation of the Agenda 2030 of the United Nations and the African Union Agenda 2063.
So to achieve the goals of this convention, we must make this, the 9th edition of the Africities Summit, a questioning summit. And in that regard, I would like to propose a 12-point questioning framework for all participants. And this framework should guide us in understanding the problem and charting the way forward. Firstly, how do we reinvigorate the management of urbanization, the electricity feed, provide affordable and inclusive transport, provide high quality and accessible education and healthcare, and improve the standards of water and sanitation provision within our intermediary cities? Secondly, how do we accelerate the reduction of extreme poverty in our cities? Third, how can national and central governments support in mobilization of resources to unlock effective delivery of services by our intermediary cities? Fourth, how can we best develop human capital in the intermediary cities in the sectors of administration, planning, and governance with a view to sustaining the momentum so far gathered towards the achievement of our SDGs? Fifth, what is the best way for us to create and sustain conducive environments for the accelerated growth of decentralization and evolution across our continent without compromising our national cohesion? Sixth, how do we reposition technology and connectivity as a driver to the achievement of SDGs in providing opportunities in our urban areas? Seventh, how can we enhance the voice of key stakeholders, including civil society, the private sector, academia, grassroots organizations, in providing capacity and impetus in the implementation of our SDGs? 8, how do we increase awareness of the negative effects of climate change and guarantee environmental equity for future generations? 9, what legal and policy frameworks should we establish so as to foster the robust and sustainable development of intermediary cities? And 10, what incentives should we put in place to enhance the competitiveness of our intermediary cities as the new frontiers and hubs for innovation, trade, and tourism? 11, what critical steps can we put in place to enhance disaster management in our urban areas, including those that may deal with pandemics similar to COVID-19? And 12, as we scale up and develop our urban areas in general, and in particular our intermediary cities, what strategies and policies are required to confront the threats of radicalization and terrorism, especially in the urban areas, including our intermediary cities? So, ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude my remarks, I would like to underscore that this must be a decade of action. The time is ripe for scaling up our efforts in support of intermediary cities and also in promoting greater synergies between local, national, and international efforts geared towards accelerating the realization of our SDGs. In every community and nation in Africa, there are sayings that recognize that in unity there is strength, and there is no challenge, no matter how seemingly insurmountable, can prevail over unified and united actions. I therefore urge all of you today to unite in the face of one of the greatest challenges of our time, and I have no doubt that through concerted and synergetic actions, Africa's intermediary cities will play their rightful role in driving the implementation of Agenda 2030 and the African Union Agenda 2063. So, ladies and gentlemen, with those few remarks, it is indeed my great pleasure and honor to declare this 9th Africities Summit officially open, and I really look forward to the fruitful deliberations that I'm sure will take place here in this great city of Kisumu.
These two agendas call for the urgent need to develop resilient and sustainable urbanization in Africa, cognizant of the fact that by 2050, the bulk of African population will be living in cities and that the majority of city dwellers will settle in intermediary cities.
This year's summit is most apt as the summit comes at a time that is critical when our continent of Africa is facing rapid urbanization, and the challenges of future cities are increasingly coming into sharp focus, more so after the shocks of the COVID-19 pandemic. Cities and local authorities around the world have played a key role in the response to COVID-19. They were our first line of defense. They were at the forefront of our prevention and containment measures, the vanguard of our humanitarian response, as well as taking the first steps towards building back livelihoods post-COVID. Local authorities therefore proved to be an indispensable ring in the governance chain and an instrumental part of pandemic prevention and response actions. Consequently, time is ripe for scaling up the role of intermediary cities as the next frontiers of African urbanization and development. I say this because in Africa, an unprecedented rate of urbanization has propelled intermediary cities to stand at approximately 1,086. These intermediary cities like Kisumu, where we are today, are home to approximately 174 million people, representing about 36% of our continent's total urban population and contributing about 40% of our continent's GDP. So as we convene to deliberate on how we can establish a shift towards a new urban paradigm and unleash the potential of intermediary cities in fostering inclusive development and the realization of our SDGs and all other social economic development initiatives, we must keep in mind that Africa is becoming increasingly urbanized. The traditional rural focus within development plans risk marginalizing a growing section of our population, one which will soon be the majority. This is not to say that our rural areas should take a back seat. Rather, it is to recognize that our development plans must be in tune with the realities of rural-urban migration and the concentration of large populations in small and often unplanned settlements in metropolitan areas. This calls for proper planning to create smart cities that meet future urbanization challenges, plans that address the emerging needs related to food security, health, shelter, environmental conservation, as well as infrastructure. The need for proper urban planning was clearly demonstrated during the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, when it became necessary to support those living in informal settlements in our cities and urban areas with food rations, as well as the provision of sanitary facilities. So, ladies and gentlemen, the challenge of our time is therefore to make our intermediary cities and municipalities sustainable and fit for all our citizens. Accordingly, this summit has the task of providing the continent with a comprehensive and achievable roadmap on how our intermediary cities can contribute towards the implementation of the Agenda 2030 of the United Nations, as well as our own African Union Agenda 2063. Here in Kenya, for example, the national government has over the last 5 years been implementing projects and programs geared towards improvement of lives of our people through the achievement of the SDGs. This has been under the auspices of our National Economic Blueprint, our Kenya Vision 2030 and its medium-term plan, the Big Four, and the agenda espouses provision of a decent roof over many more heads at affordable costs, at affordable health care for all, value addition by increasing manufacturing and jobs, as well as ensuring food security for all our people. We have also embarked on a slum upgrade program that is spread across our country, notably in our capital city of Nairobi and the intermediary cities of Mombasa and Kisumu, as well as our youngest city, that being the city of Nakuru. These concerted actions have been through the Kenya Devolution Support Program, the Urban Support Program, the Kenya Slum Upgrade Program, and the Kenya Informal Settlement Improvements Program.
As much as possible, the development models to be implemented in Africa should be more energy efficient, low carbon, more inclusive, and more resilient. Among the high-level dignitaries who arrived at the summit are former President of the Republic of Seychelles, Danny Fair, the President of United Cities and Local Governments Africa, Christine Ndutune from Gabon, and the Vice Chair Kisumu Governor Anyang' Nyong'o.
Mr. President and Your Excellency, let me take this opportunity to thank the organizers who have worked very hard with the support of many young people in the city of Kisumu to make this summit possible. I always look forward to meeting young people, especially women and girls, whose future is intimately tied to the United Nations Human Settlement Agenda. When a young child born this year celebrates her 18th birthday, she will join other Africans in building an urban future. More likely than not, it will be in an intermediate city. By 2050, 50% of all Africans will live in urban areas. She will be among the additional 1.4 billion people that will be born or will migrate to urban settlement. And this, I would like also to try to imagine that what future will be like for our young women and young boys born in 2022 today. Today, more than 64% of the urban population in Africa live in informal settlements. There is a deficit of housing and housing finance, with only 15% of urban dwellers in Africa able to afford to purchase their own homes. Depending on where our young lady is born, it will be a major battle to get a job, own a home, and start a family. This is the urban future she will have if we do nothing to change the urban agenda in Africa. What is the role of the intermediate cities? Your Excellency, Mr. President, I would like to recognize your contribution to Africa and the people of Kenya, your foresight and investment made by the government of Kenya in housing, infrastructure, industry and job creation will be felt many decades to come. You have successfully created an abode of peace and development in East Africa, a model for a continent and the rest of us in the developing world. Congratulations to you, Mr. President. Thank you for taking the initiative to host this important summit during the unprecedented times when the world is experiencing the effect of what I This perfect storm is increasing the social economic vulnerability of cities, often overlook our intermediate cities. Too small to be made a national priority, but not big enough to be independently resilient. Kenya, under your leadership, is showing the way to foster closer cooperation and resource allocation between national and local government. This is helping to deliver resources to communities most in need. In the last 50 years, the United Nations in Africa have contributed to ensuring that urban communities have had greater access to basic services, transport infrastructure, and now digital connectivity. Our engagement with more than 30 countries in Africa has given us opportunities to foster collaboration with both national and local governments towards prosperous, safe, and resilient cities in Africa, with the support of the development of national urban policies in 20 countries in Africa. I would like to appreciate the collaboration with the government of Kenya at both national and country level in the sector of housing, physical planning, promoting resilience for the urban poor, waste management, and on the Blue Economy initiative for coastal cities planning being jointly carried out by UN Habitat and UNEP to boost the circular economy with the financial support of the European Union. I cannot overemphasize our great collaboration with Kisumu County on the lakefront development, on municipal revenue enhancement, and on local economic development for long-term recovery from COVID-19. And I believe the new United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework under leadership of the UN Resident Coordinator will foster further collaboration with the government of Kenya and will offer an opportunity to the whole UN family to accelerate the Sustainable Development Goals in Kenya.
Today, Your Excellencies, as we reflect on the theme of the 9th edition of the Africities Summit, to what extent can we declare confidently that we are on course in implementing the two agendas, one for the UN, one for the AU, both related and complementary? Fully aware that both the UN and AU declarations will only matter to the African people when they have a positive impact on their lives, we meet here today, Your Excellencies, to review the extent to which we have implemented them and what is yet to be done. In Kenya, Your Excellencies, we began doing this when Kenyans approved a new constitution in 2010, introducing devolution in our governance under the presidency of Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta. Today, the devolution project has replaced fear of exclusion at the grassroots with participation and involvement in decision-making. In intermediate cities like Kisumu, plenty of evidence is already available regarding the dividends of devolution. Intermediate cities also have the potential to address inequalities among groups that have arisen from central power structures that disproportionately channel resources to few urban areas. Countries like South Africa have not only entrenched devolution, but have also devolved key public functions to other cities. Cape Town houses their parliament. Pretoria is where the executive sits, while Johannesburg is the business center. Apart from its well-established federal system, Nigeria has developed Abuja as its capital city, leaving Lagos largely as a place for business. Tanzania, though largely governed with a central structure, has Dodoma as the seat of its parliament, leading to its growth and development, while Dar es Salaam remains largely a commercial and industrial center. This summit delivers the policy challenges that emerge are designing constitutional frameworks that are sensitive to, but not trapped in, elite political relations that usually encourage divisions within the nations on a tribal basis. The evolution offers an answer that emphasizes both individual liberty and community values by empowering local communities within their own local government, elected by them and kept in check by them. This is the essence of democracy and democratic decision-making for equitable development. Your Excellencies, in that spirit of the importance of local government, the United States is a local government of Africa was established.
Africities Ambassador Lupita Nyong'o, UN Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohamed, Africities Ambassador Lupita Nyong'o, UN Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohamed, and US Special President Envoy on Climate John Kerry addressed the participants virtually, Lupita praising her father for transforming Kisumu.
It's fitting that you are all gathering some 6 months before Egypt will host COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, and that you'll focus the world's attention on the tremendous risks and opportunities ahead for Africa's growing cities of all sizes. I'm particularly grateful that you're shining a light on the role subnational actors can and frankly must play in the climate fight. Local leaders and community groups have always helped lead us forward on this issue, ever since I can remember being part of helping to organize the first Earth Day in 1970. And that is why, in the Paris Agreement, at COP26 in Glasgow and elsewhere, the world has recognized the critical role that you must continue to play in this fight. Here in Africa, you see the urgency of this moment. You're living it. You know the world is simply not moving fast enough to avoid the worst consequences of the climate crisis and to hold the global temperature rise within the 1.5 degree limit. We're simply not getting this job done globally in the way that we ought to be. And you also know that you and your citizens are all on the front lines of the crisis. 17 of the world's 20 most climate vulnerable countries can be found in Africa. And that's the case even though 48 nations in sub-Saharan Africa are responsible for only 0.55% of total emissions. The most recent IPCC report told us the climate crisis is already here. You already knew that because you lived through it. Extreme heat waves, devastating droughts, changing planting seasons, and more punishing storms. But here's the good news. The IPCC also told us that we still have time to secure a cleaner, healthier, safer planet for all of us. That work starts here in Africa with the world's fastest growing populations and economies. Our climate crisis is also an opportunity to seize smarter growth and better jobs. Take adaptation as an example. Preparing people for this warmer world can save lives and livelihoods, but it's also just plain old common sense. Roads, bridges, and ports can only spur economic growth and reduce poverty next year if they are built to survive the storms of tomorrow. Critical efforts are already underway in Africa, from Rwandan farmers using more accurate forecasting to Tunisian ports preparing for rising seas and flood risks. To support the adaptation work we have to engage in, at COP26, President Biden announced his President's Emergency Plan for Adaptation and Resilience. It's known as PREPARE. PREPARE brings together our diplomatic, development, and technical expertise to help more than 500 million people, including many millions in Africa, manage the impacts of the climate crisis by 2030. When it comes to finance, President Biden also pledged last year to quadruple U.S. international public climate finance to over $11 billion per year by 2024. And the private sector is finally showing up with the money that we need to invest in order to accelerate this transition, including in Africa, where multi-trillion-dollar industries are being created. In all of this work, we will continue to follow your lead. Over 1,000 cities and local governments, including many of Africa's major urban centers, have now committed to the Race to Zero and Race to Resilience campaigns. From strengthening green buildings in Cape Town to building water resilience in Addis and Kigali, you are showing us what is both necessary and possible. My friends, we know that human choices have caused this crisis, and therefore we know that human choices can put us back on the right path. That is exactly what you are helping to do today. So on behalf of President Biden and the entire United States government, thank you for your partnership, your friendship, and most of all, your leadership and your dedication to this effort. We are going to win this fight. And when we do, it will be because of leaders like you in Africa and across the planet.
The host, Governor Anyang' Nyong'o, gave his welcoming remarks, followed by the Council of Governors Chairman Martin Wambora and the President of United Cities and Local Governments, Ndutume. The chairperson of the African Union Commission, Musa Faki, addressed the conference with Devolution CS Eugene Wamalwa, giving his remarks on the change that Africa needs.
President, you show once more your leadership and dedication for Kenya and for the implementation of African Union Agenda 2063. And thank you for encouraging me to speak English. I would like to congratulate the United Cities and Local Government of Africa, the Government of the Republic of Kenya, Governors of Kenya and the Kisumu County Government for the unprecedented organization of the summit and the warm hospitality extended to us. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the African Union embraces the theme of this summit of Africities, of the role of intermediary cities in the implementation of Agenda 2030 of the United Nations and Agenda 2063 of the African Union. Intermediary cities have a crucial role on urbanization policy and have become a renewed subject of interest for governments, international organizations, and academics. Intermediary cities are growing fast and have the greatest potential to shape the urban future, and yet they are often overlooked. Much attention has been paid to capital cities, which are the political, social, and economic centers of a country. As a result, our economies fail to realize the benefits that a more balanced spatial development and intercity collaboration can generate. The growth of intermediary cities implies an increase in wealth, inequalities, need for housing, infrastructure and urban services, pollution, need for decent jobs, increased waste production, and therefore, their role needs to be recognized and clarified. If left alone to manage themselves without a clear role, cities will manifest into chaotic development. Cities have their unique challenges and potentials. Therefore, clarification of their role should take into consideration their peculiarities. Ladies and gentlemen, I am particularly pleased to see that the summit has chosen the theme linking the global UN agenda to Africa's agenda as a template of how to think global while acting locally to African aspiration and distinct cultural realities. Africa, like the rest of the world, has committed itself to the implementation of the United Nations agenda and the new urban agenda. Furthermore, the continent's agenda 2063 outlines not only our aspiration for the future, but also identifies key flagship programs which can boost Africa's economic growth and development and lead to the rapid transformation of the continent. The three agendas have powerfully captured the role of cities and their envisioned cities that fulfill their social, economic, ecological, and political function in an inclusive manner. At the continent level, the African Union has developed a regional framework for the implementation of the new urban agenda. The AU has developed also the African Charter on Values and Principles of Decentralization, Local Governance, and Local Development to facilitate implementation of decentralization, which remains a challenge in many countries. This instrument serves as a sound foundation for guiding the development of our cities, as well as clarifying your role as local authorities in intermediary cities. With your experience and key role as mayors and governors, it is now up to you to make sure that these valuable tools become an integral part of your urban management to ensure the decentralization and urbanization we want. As you deliberate here on the shores of Lake Victoria, which is both a trade route, transnational water highway for cities beyond Kisumu, it is also a reminder of the impacts of climate change on our lives and livelihoods. I also want to remind you that regional integration is a fundamental objective of Agenda 2063. The African Free Trade Area Agreement, AFCFTA, can be seen in action here in Kisumu, a vibrant city that trades with neighboring counties and countries, facilitating the free movement of goods and people for the shared prosperity far beyond the shores of Lake Victoria.
This city has a great history, like other cities in Africa, in Europe, and across the world. It has a long history that stretches back to the Victorian era. We had two Englishmen who came here in 1858, Speke and Barton, and they said they had discovered Lake Victoria, and they named it after their queen. Before they came, the community living here, the Luo community, called Lake Victoria Namlolwe. The Luyas lived here, they called it Enyanja Yawarure. When you go to the Rwandese, they call the lake Enyanza. But Speke and Barton came and said they were the first people to discover Lake Victoria, and they named it after their queen. That is how Lake Victoria came to be. The second thing that happened was the British now came in to open up the hinterland of Africa to connect the port of Mombasa and the port of Kisumu. And this is one lesson we want to take away as Africa, the importance of infrastructure in developing intermediary cities, in growing intermediary cities. Indeed, Kisumu grew as an accident, and it came out of a huge debate in the British Parliament when Henry Lobaloch called this a gigantic folly. Building a train from Mombasa to Kisumu looked like an impossibility then. In 1896 they started. and it was opposed by the British Parliament. But it went on through a lot of challenges. Winston Churchill came and said, this was not a folly. In fact, it was a brilliant conception. And it was an art of the British tradition of muddling through things. So they muddled through a lot of politics back home to get on the ground. There were lions who were man-eaters in Savo. They muddled through the Savo. They had tsetse-fly attacks, a lot of disease. They muddled through it. They went through ravines, valleys, faced the Maasai warriors, very fierce Nandi warriors. But they muddled through it, and by 1901, they arrived here in Kisumu. It was then called Port Florence. As we speak today, this is one of the most transformative infrastructural developments in Africa. We are happy that after our president took over, we have continued to invest as national government in this infrastructure. We have a standard gauge railway that has been built during this administration, all the way from Mombasa. It's now in Naivasha. It will come to Kisumu. We know that it was not easy to do that, but again, we are transforming this city because of that infrastructure. Investing in ports, as Musa Faki has said, it's about ports, it's about roads, it's about the rail, it's about water infrastructure. And this is one lesson we want to take away as we look at the future of intermediary cities in our continent to transform it. So I want to thank you. There will be many sessions where we want to share experiences about our journey in devolution, about the success of decentralization in this country. There are many breakaway sessions, there are many delegations that we have engaged. Please take your time, let us engage, share experiences and learn from each other. Let us also look at how we can look at the challenges facing us, how we can overcome these challenges, and how we can address the vulnerabilities that are going to face our populations as they move into their cities. Experts are saying by 2050, we'll have over 60% of our populations in these intermediary cities. So we must prepare for that. And the role of intermediary cities in realization of the AU Agenda 2063 and the EU Agenda 2030 is at the center of our discussions today. Please let us share, but also take time to enjoy the beautiful lake out there, Lake Victoria. It's the biggest tropical lake in Africa and the second largest freshwater lake in the world after Lake Superior.